is the brand consumer study of Lyft. Okay, so first off, we have the motivational principles, the selective perception, so the consumer remembering the ease of the ride they had, but not how difficult it was to find the car and drive once they arrived. So a common problem for taxis and other transportation devices and other transportation methods. Selective attention, so consumers screening out the other passengers in the Lyft when they carpool a ride for lower prices. So they'll only remember how great it was and not the other passengers, and if there was a problem, whatever. Selective distortion. Selective distortion. A consumer will hold the belief that Lyft drivers are all. The consumer will hold the belief that Lyft drivers are all nice, even when they encounter a rude or disrespectful driver. And just meaningful difference. A consumer decides to get an Uber instead of a Lyft and is unsatisfied or unhappy with the driver experience or the prices of their competition. So some of the key changes in brands marketing of same category. Some cultural and social demographics. Ride-sharing services are on the rise in today's society. Younger demographics are the main consumer for Lyft and other ride-sharing apps like Uber. Competitive Uber and ride-sharing apps are Lyft's main competition. The technological aspect, Lyft is frequently updating their app with new features and consumer-friendly interface, and that's one of the reasons why people like Lyft over Uber. The regulatory regulations. Self-driving cars are being developed and multiple states are loosening laws against them. Eventually Lyft and Uber will be exclusively self-driving cars, so in 10 years there's a strong possibility that all the cars that Lyft and Uber use will be self-driving. Economic. Consumers see Lyft as a cheaper way of transportation versus owning a car and paying insurance. So. The mission and marketing objectives. So definitely to create a better ride experience for all passengers is definitely one of the main focuses, and build an employee culture that fosters human connection and a feel-good experience, which you can see here and here. Some of the consumer bubbles are the convenient transportation, accessibility, and it's a cheaper option. So the competitive analysis. So here you can see competition one, the Uber. Their marketing is like the black car service, and it's easier. Taxis, yellow cab company, and it's accessible because you can pretty much get a taxi anywhere in the city. Public transportation, there's a lot of them, the quantity, and it's cheaper. Uber and Lyft are direct competitors and fight over the same market, neither just drastically different from one another. Taxis are a dying industry, but still one of Lyft's main competitions because of how big and popular it still is. Research into perception loyalty. Lyft does not have strong brand loyalty with their customers. A big part of that is due to the minuscule differences between them and their competitors. Most customers will use both Lyft and Uber whenever they need a ride, and even the drivers will work for both companies too, just because it makes more money for them. Lyft users do have a loyalty for their services over taxis and public transportation, so consumers still would rather a Lyft, or Lyft consumers will definitely still rather a Lyft than a taxi or public transportation. Lifting companies alike obliterated the taxi industry, and they saw taxi business and created a product that disrupted the whole market. The CFHR, internal influences, perception, learning, intuition. Some of the external influences for consumers would be culture, so like everyone is doing it, all their friends. Peer influence, timing and conditioning, so they don't want to wait outside and waiting for a cab and just waiting in the bad weather. And value, so utilitarian, because the solution helps the consumer solve a problem or task. Lyft consumer preference, ride sharing apps over taxis and public transportation. So you could see here that Uber and Lyft have, exceeded their other competitions. So like rental cars and taxis have all gone down, while Uber and Lyft have gone up 75%. Consumer typically younger, millennial, and Gen Z demographic. Lyft consumers are generally concerned about the social class. So if all their friends are doing it, they'll join too, and they don't want to be viewed as like, someone that's lower class than them, or so they'll try to keep up with it and keep up with the. Lyft consumers are generally concerned about social class, so therefore, like, they'll pay the extra money to get a Lyft and an Uber. They value technology, and they usually are tech savvy, which goes into like how you use the app, because with the app, to use the service, you need the app, you need a smartphone, and you need to know how to be able to work it. So they're usually more tech savvy than, like, say, a person getting a taxi. Consumers don't buy cars, and they generally value them less than people that do own cars. Their target customers, so some of them might be a 26-year-old that's a male that is a stockbroker, who has like a bachelor's degree and makes $60,000 a year and lives in the city, New York City. Another customer would be a 35-year-old female executive making over $100,000, married and living in Chicago. So there's a trend here of like living in the city and living in an urban environment, and usually making a good amount of money. The Lyft consumer profile outcomes. So most of Lyft's consumers are younger people living in densely populated cities. So the best way to reach them is through social media apps. Instagram advertising would target the consumer effectively, and a big one for me would be public transportation, such as buses and subways would be a great way to reach the consumers, because you can say, oh hey, instead of sitting in this disgusting or dirty train or bus, you can get your own car for not as much. And that is all.